Guys, so I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I've written so far during Nano, especially now that Nano's finished. It's come up a lot in a few other videos as well, and I thought I'd put my 2 cents on it. It's the whole idea of overwriting versus underwriting, and honestly, I don't know what category I fall into. I think, like, during Nano, everyone is just so focused on the whole get to 50,000 words and make those 50,000 words good. But then it's so easy to fall into the whole quantity over quality just for the hope of reaching the mark sooner, I guess. So I kind of don't really know where I stand on it. Also, I'm trying to make these little segments that, even though they do have a topic, and it is going to be talking about my process of these different writing topics and how I go about it. I can't call it advice because I'm not in a position where I can give advice. I'm not published. I haven't finished my Nano story. I don't feel comfortable being like, yes, here's all the amazing things that I do and you should do them too. Because who am I? Who am I to give that advice? I was going to drink this, I don't know why I'm waving it around. Yeah, I'm not in a position to give advice. This is just me telling you my way of thinking, I suppose. And I'm trying to do it in a more fun, personal way, because I've said before that before Nano, before I started recording more and more and more, I was very robotic, I was very stiff, I'm clearly very awkward, so I'm just trying to relax a little and a bit, relax a bittle. I'm going to try and relax a bittle and show a little bit more of my personality and just have a little bit more fun with these videos. So yeah, we're still going to be talking about overwriting versus underwriting. It's just going to be a little bit more relaxed, I guess. So here we go. Let's just start with what brought on this topic, because during Nano this year, I managed to write 73,000 words. But I only managed to complete 11 of the 26 chapters that I've actually planned. So is that a case of me overwriting big time just to get to the word mark, or is it a case of me just rambling but in a necessary way, and this is just going to be a much bigger book than I thought? I honestly don't know. I do not know. But that's what editing and beta readers are for, so yay. This is a very weird angle, hang on a minute. So yeah, I don't know if I've fallen into the overwriting category or underwriting and it's just spanning out even further. So what is overwriting and underwriting? Well, from my experience with it, overwriting is when you add way more than you need to. You go on and on in very specific details. When you're describing a character, you don't just give the basics of hair colour, skin tone, body shape, what their dress sense is, the very bare minimum that we need to be like, okay, got the image in my head, off we go. You have to go into so much detail. It's not just brown hair, it's the type of chestnut mahogany hybrid hair. She doesn't just have freckles, there are very specific freckles that go over the person's nose and they're dotted over their shoulders, and it's not just a green shirt, it's a mossy blouse with X amount of buttons. This is just a very vague example, mine, but it is when you go overboard on details when you really don't need to, and you do get the word count, but you tend to just ramble. And by that point, by the time you've finished describing whatever it is that you're trying to describe or whatever point you're trying to make, by that point you've lost your point. You've painted a hell of a picture, but now no one can remember what the point was or what the story is or where we even were. It's just a very pretty picture without a lot of substance to it. It's the same when you're writing dialogue. Sometimes there will be moments where your character goes into a bit of an exposition dump and just goes like, oh, you're new to this town? Well, here, let me give you a guided tour and talk about every single building and the history, which will maybe not even be relevant to the story, but I need to paint my world for you. I have done this before, especially with me and one of my beta readers we still are planning on writing a story together, which we're now thinking of turning into one of those visual novels, or like I do not know what they're called. I've completely forgotten. Like visual graphic novels that you play on a screen, that kind of thing. But yeah, and when we were first planning on writing it as a book, I went into so much detail with the world building, and even when we were showing other people, hey, what do you think of this? And like, well, okay, we see what you're going with, but it's kind of boring because we don't know why this world is relevant, and you're probably not even going to spend that much time there, so can we just meet the characters and get on with it already? And yeah, that was crushing, but it was a bit of a wake-up call. If you're going on and on to a point where you can't even remember what the point of the scene was, or the point of the dialogue, or you're just giving too much of an exposition dump for no real reason, or even giving parts of history which, yeah, are fascinating, but they don't have anything to do with the story, then you're overwriting. You're going way too overboard with it, and it's just stuff that is going to clutter up your book. Then on the other hand, you have underwriting. Underwriting can be just as harmful, where you have almost no details, or you just give the bare minimum, and the dialogue is very forced. It doesn't feel natural. You're just trying to get the point across as soon as possible. And in certain situations, if it's like a high tension situation where, you know, your characters are, I don't know, for example, on the run, you're like, right, okay, this is the thing, this is why we're running, we don't have time, we gotta go now. Like, okay, that would make sense for you to be a bit underwriting, because you're in a rush, you want to get as many things forward as possible, and then get your characters the hell out of there. That would make sense. However, if you're doing that for the entire thing, it can be very jumpy, you're going to be thrown around all over the place, people aren't going to be able to paint a good picture in their head of what is going on, things are going to feel forced, things aren't going to feel natural, and if it's very short and rushed, then it kind of gives off the impression that you aren't enjoying yourself as much. Like, if it just kind of feels like you want this story to be over with as fast as possible, and if you're feeling that as a writer and that's the impression you're giving, then how do you expect your readers to actually sit down and enjoy the story? So what do we do about this? First of all, I'd like to point out that there is nothing wrong if you're an overwriter. There is nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you need to get as much information out there as possible in the early drafts, so that then you can whittle it down into something that makes more sense. And then by all means, whatever you've written and then taken out, you can keep for maybe a sequel or some other background information that you could use later down the line. It's not a bad thing to overwrite. In fact, sometimes it is better to overwrite than underwrite, because at least then you know what you can whittle down. Likewise, if you're an underwriter, nothing wrong with that either. Sometimes you just want to get the bare bones of the story out, again, in the early drafts, so that then you know exactly where your story's going to go. It's a more detailed plan in a way, and then you can just add more meat to the bones later on. There's nothing wrong either way, just as long as you get this habit done and dusted in the early drafting stages, because then editing is going to be a pain either way, but that's just editing in general. But overall, it's going to be an interesting look to see how you can expand and how you can whittle down. It's just, there's nothing wrong with being one way or the other. That's fine. As for me personally, I depend on the situation. There are times when I'm really enjoying a scene and I don't quite want it to end, so I will add more bits of conversation that don't really make sense to the plot. I will go a little bit further into describing how a character is feeling or the setting that they're in, just to make it last a bit longer, and I'll be really enjoying it, but then later on I'll be reading it again and then thinking, God, this goes on and on and on and on and on. Then there are other times when I'm like, I do not know how this scene is going to go, I don't know how this conversation should be, I'm just gonna speed write it, I guess, and just get the main points out, and then I'll revisit it later. So the other times I'll just be like, okay, anytime you want to wrap this up, that'll be great, and other times it'll be like, whoa, well, that was fast. Yeah, I depend on the situation. It's kind of like my whole pants plotter thing. I will try to plot, but I'll do it in such a random way that it may as well be pantsing, so then I can just expand more and more on it later on. So how do you know if you're an overwriter or an underwriter? You don't. You have to be very self-aware to understand right away which one you are. And if you do, great, you already are on the right track. But at the end of the day, for most people, you aren't going to know which type you are until you look over your own work, and then you start to realise which end of the scale you're going to. I've been thinking about it a lot since Nano, because of the whole word count but not finishing the book thing, and I know there's some people out there who are like, but you got so much done for your word count, why are you complaining? I'm not complaining, I am not complaining at all. I am so happy with what I managed to do. I just feel like, did I really favour quantity over quality? And although my beta reader currently has little to no complaints, she has pointed out that there are a few scenes that don't quite mesh well or could be expanded on. So I don't think the overwriting is a problem, but the quality of the overwriting is. It's not a fun position to be in, but it's a fun one to explore, I suppose. I once heard an analogy from another writing channel which, for the life of me, I cannot remember now. If I remember, I will put it in the description below because they are far more experienced than I. They said that overwriting and underwriting isn't just a writer thing, it's also a reader preference. Some readers will love the overwriting and getting to learn more and just getting their teeth into this massive hunk of information that's there. Other people prefer just to read the story and just to get to the point and would prefer much shorter, jumpier scenes. They described it as how much icing you prefer on a cupcake. And I just absolutely love that. As someone who loves baking, I love this analogy. Cupcakes need icing, they need frosting, whichever you call it depending on the country. They need a topping. But it is all down to your personal taste how much topping you like. Some people prefer a big, massive dollop of frosting that when you bite into it, it just gets all over your face and you can just get your teeth into this sugary mess. Some people just want a little layer so it's nice and neat, no problem. It all depends on how much topping you like on your cupcake. Please don't put frosting in your books, I'm just saying. So yeah, I did have a point with this video, but it's just turned into a topic rant, I suppose. I was going to say something about how I deal with it, but then at the end of the day, everyone deals with it the same way. It is just down to editing. I think, personally, I prefer overwriting to underwriting, but that's just because I know I ramble. I write how I speak, and as you can tell from these videos, I go off in so many tangents, I go off on so many random little tidbits, and I'm like that with my writing as well. So I'll be reading a conversation between two characters and I'll be like, where did they go with this? I don't know. And then suddenly the last few lines goes back to the plot just to end the scene suddenly. I'm like, why? I guess at the end of the day, I'm still learning. I am still learning, and the idea of overwriting, underwriting, it all depends on you, whatever you prefer. There is no wrong way to do it. There's just what you prefer and what your readers are going to prefer, and sometimes they're not going to mesh. By all means, edit and expand or shrink down some scenes to make sure it makes sense. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you write, as long as what you're writing makes sense and you are passionate about it. I guess what I can take away from just talking out loud about this is that I'm happy with the stuff I've written, but I'm aware that it is not perfect. I have massively overwritten, and that's okay. I am fully aware that I need to add more to certain scenes, and that's okay. So some things that I do when I'm editing to make sure that things make sense is that if I've clearly overwritten something, just read it over a few times, see if it makes sense. If there's some lines that you like but they don't really fit in what's going on and they're clearly just there because you liked them, then by all means cut it out and maybe you can add it to something later on where you haven't written as much and it could still fit in there nicely. I've got no real advice to give because, like I said, I'm not in a position to give advice. I'm not a professional. Still learning, as I said. I guess it's all about trial and error. There will be times when you write pages and pages and pages of a conversation that might not even need to be there. Likewise, you could write less than 3 sentences describing a massive world that you've created and need to expand on it some more, especially in the areas where your characters are. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It is just complete trial and error, and it all depends on the day, on your mindset. You just gotta reread and revise and edit, and somehow it all turns into something amazing. So I feel like this video ended on such an anticlimax, and I'm sorry about that. I guess at the end of the day, you do you. Overwriting, underwriting, it is so easy to just get mixed up when it comes to Nano. But as long as you're happy with what you're writing, and you've listened to the feedback that you're getting, and you're trying and you're making an effort, and you are editing and you are taking notice of the story and trying to get your point across, but also make sure that your point makes sense. Not that anything in this video is making sense, but alright. Then that's the main thing. You've just got to write however you want to write and however you can write, so then it just comes together eventually. I am sorry again that this turned into such a weird video, but it's a weird topic. At the end of the day, if you're happy, that's all that matters. So go out there and look over the work that you've done or the work that you're planning to do and add more. Chip chunks away, do whatever you want to do to make sure your work is the best that it can be. With that in mind, I'm going to go back to writing because I've been in work all day and I've got poll later on and I am quite tired. And I am now out of coffee. So I'll see you guys in another video where I will pretend to talk about another topic and end up going on even more tangents, because as well as overwriting, I am also overspeaking. Fantastic! Seriously though, I need to end this video because it's just gone on too long. Happy writing everyone, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!